Here's what happened. This week, I was able to check out the numbers, and 90% of you, over 90% actually, are between the age of 28, 34, fellow millennial generation. So I'm excited to start focusing on topics that I feel you can really relate to, and that's going to help you with navigating avoiding the burnout, and then being able to work towards make burnout extinct. So what happened too was yesterday, I went on a spontaneous date night with my partner to the beach to watch a movie. There was like a free movie night event happening, which was a vibe. It was super cool to go there. And it reminded me, like when we got there, they had a big screen set up. There was families that were there, kids were running around. We sat down, had our beach chairs, towels set up. And we had both seen the movie. The movie that was shown was Wonka. And I remember like looking over at her and just being like, this is so cool. Like, we're on the beach, got the ocean as background, watching this movie. And to get to this point, there was some friction before of deciding to commit to showing up and being there for the date night, because we had seen signs earlier in the day about it. And there was that moment of excuses popping up in my head of, oh, but it's like 8:30 is start time. I usually try to go to bed at 10:30, and this is during the weekday. So, and then we're going to have to grab all this stuff and bring it over. So there's all these potential excuses coming up, and I'm grateful that we both decided to like just say like, fuck those excuses. Let's do this thing and experience it. And it reminded me of the struggle that can be faced with our generation, especially those of us working from home, of deciding to get the hell out of the house and go and experience social activities and do stuff outside the house. And it is, from the looks of what I've seen on the internet, it's gotten worse for Gen Z. So today I want to dive into this more, unpack it more for you. This is Make Burnout Extinct. I'm Robert David Weeks. Let's dive into that question that I shared with you of, does work from home culture move us faster to burnout? And it depends. That's the short answer. It depends. I would argue now in this current culture, yes, it does move us faster, because I feel we've lost the skills that we can use to be able to cope with the stresses that we feel that have been amplified, because now we don't have how it had been traditionally is we could go to an office, another environment. But now if our office is also where we live, that stress that we can feel from work can become chronic because there's no way to escape it. So I want to dive into how this connects the work from home culture, like your experience right now, how that could connect to burnout of moving faster. So I want to create that definition for you of why they relate. Then I want to go through the 3 plays. And these 3 plays are 3 new habits that you can be introduced to and try out for yourself to know if you want to continue to work these and put these into your burnout proof playbook, because I believe we each have our own playbook to make burnout extinct. I go back to John Butcher's quote, there's no one right way, but there is a right way for you. And my goal with this podcast is to give you as many different ways, many different habits, many different plays to try out, to figure out what is your alignment for the right set of plays that's going to make burnout extinct for you. So I'll go through the 3 of those, share my personal experience, because I've tried each one of those. I feel it's important to try things. If I share them with you, it's important, I believe, to try them and make sure they work for me before I share them with you. I feel that's really important, and then I can provide another input on it too. So we'll go through those. And then I also want to talk about what's happening out there globally that I feel you're going to resonate with. It's also going to help paint the picture of what's coming if we don't make a change here. And I feel it's already happened. It's more, these are things I'm noticing that it is a global issue. It's not just a localized or individual issue. Like, this is globally an issue for this work from home, like what this is doing for younger generations. Okay. Before I go down that tangent, let's bring it back and let's define the connection points here. Okay, to start, getting into work from home, what happens is we can keep work with us. So we're constantly thinking about it 24/7. That can happen, that can compound by working from home. What that then fuels is, again, that stress fuels the chronic inflammation that can also then lead to chronic exhaustion. And that is one of those 3 red flags that causes us to hit burnout. So that is the connection point, is we are potentially compounding the stress that we can feel at work, because that's where we're spending a lot of our time, is in work. And if we have no place to escape from, because as traditionally we can't go to an office, our office is our home, that can become an overwhelming feeling and a trapped feeling. So I get you, because I've been there for nearly 10 years. Out of the 10 years, only 2 years of those 10 years was when I went to an office with a team before my 2018 burnout. So I feel you, I get you for how that can feel. Really, you can have that trapped feeling. So to get into the first play, it connects back to the date night that my partner and I went on to see a movie on the beach. And that is, find activities that are outside the house that you can try and put it on the calendar. So that is your first play that you can try. Some examples, because again, going back to that moment for me, how I felt being there was this sense of the shoulders sinking down, like literally my physical body, shoulders sunk down. I felt a relief. Felt like the tension was moving out of my body, and I could notice the relaxation feeling. And from there, I was able to look at my partner and be like, this is awesome. I get to spend time with her. Like, we get to connect personally. We're watching a movie that we both like, and we're able to have that time where it's away from work. And I know we could all, including myself, use more of those times, more of those opportunities. So other examples of, let's say you don't have a beach, you're not near a beach. What could be some other examples? One that comes up for me is running clubs. If you're into running, walking, because people walk these, they're super fun. And I'm noticing, going back to the other episode about dating, like they're also a great place for dating, because you're going there having an informal time to talk and connect at the beginning before you get ready to go on your 5K run or walk. Then you do it, you get exercise move in for your body that helps out with mitochondria development. It helps to create more energy for yourself, which also helps to support you to navigate avoiding the burnout. So there's other benefits to it. And then you have post run or walk, you have the time to connect again with people. So that's another example. Another one that comes up is farmer's market. So you're able to go to the farmer's market. You can get your groceries for the day. You can also just walk around and experience the different vendors that are there. That's super fun. And they're usually, they're all over the place for the different cities and towns. So hopefully there'd be one near you. So that could be another example. Going to a local park for a walk. You can go for a walk. That is another great way to just get outside of the house and experience activities. Other people are at the park too, so you can get that opportunity to connect with strangers and be able, if you want, just to have your own space and be out there, but you're in the presence of other people and you can feel that energy too from other people. So those are examples that you can take and try out for this play. Because what came up for me, I saw this on the internet and it blew my mind. It surprised me. I was like, shit, this is where we're at. So South Korea, they have a program currently where they are helping young adults to go out there and connect and socialize and get out of the house. So what they're doing is they're paying them a monthly stipend of the US equivalent of $490 to go and experience activities. And they call it for recluse youth is the name. So seeing that program and then understanding, I saw this other study from the American Psychiatric Association. That's this survey. It was a survey that they did, not a study, survey, where they asked, it was, what they found was 1 out of 3 Americans are lonely every week. And I'm like, I raise my hand for that because I feel that. There are moments where I have the feeling of loneliness. It was a lot bigger of a struggle early on when I moved back in with my parents post burnout recovery. So I don't want you to get to that point where you're at burnout and having to recover. I don't want that for you. So That I felt, because I had no friends in my immediate environment when I moved back in with my parents. It was tough to just get motivated to get outside. And I've talked about that before, of going around that circle at the park, the walking circle around this small pond at this park. So I get you on that one. And this program just reaffirms how big of an issue this is globally. And technology hasn't helped with this. There have been, I got to say, there's some great ways to connect with technology if we decide to take it and dive deeper. That's how I met my partner, was through Instagram in the DMs. However, if we were to look at our screen times, I know I'm at fault here. I at my roughest point, I've had 12 hours of screen time. So there we can, when we have the ability to get whatever potentially we want for our basic needs through our phone, then that causes us to have lower urges to want to get outside of our home and experience other things because we're getting all of our needs met. So I feel it's really important to highlight that I get you for where you're at with this. And I know the challenges that are being faced here. However, we got to make a change. Like, we've got to take some responsibility here, go for it, realize that yes, there's a lot of things that are coming at us as challenges, but I want to tell you, you can make a change. You can do this thing. I'm constantly working on this, but I'm noticing my own improvements. So if I'm improving, I know you can too. So that's play number one that you can try. Let's get into play number two. This one is about the home environment, the actual workspace. So for millennials here, like, you may have kids, young kids right now too. So that could be chaotic of an environment. Or you're living with family. Like, I think of the other stat where this has been the most time that young adults have moved back in with their parents since the Great Depression. So you may be living with parents right now. I get that too. I've been there. So there could be a lot of chaotic shit going on in the days. That's like a blunt way to put it. A lot of things that are happening in your day at home. A lot of distractions too, laundry, clothes, all that. So we need to create and define these workspaces for ourselves so that we know we have key areas where we're going to put boundaries around work when we focus in on work in this space. And then those other areas around the home, we can take a break from work and be able to have personal time. That is really important when we are constantly at our home, and we have that personal space and then workspace. So for me, how I have done that, because I it's a little bit of a unique perspective. Like, yes, I'm staying at homes, but I'm also staying at hotels a lot of times too. So I like to think about it as, figure out, like, for me, as an example, when I'm in a hotel room, that work desk, I will use that as work. That's my workspace. So I define that as workspace. But what I need is multiple workstations that I could choose from, because not every day I'm going to want to work from the same space. And I want variety. Variety is so important and helpful for you to create more excitement in your workday, which then can fuel you to feel less stressed because you're excited, you're doing new things, and also can help you to feel more energized, so you're not hitting that chronic exhaustion either. So adding variety is really helpful for the body. So I have like two or three that I choose from. So I'll have the desk, and then what I'll actually do, I'll get real into it, micro spaces, is I will say the foot of the bed. I'll lie horizontal on the. So I'm trying to think of how to word this without it sounding weird. So I'm at the foot of the bed. Like, I will lay down, have my computer at the foot of the bed, working there. But then when I'm actually in the bed with my head on the pillow, that for me is personal time. So separate from workspace, but the workspace will be at the foot of the bed. So I had to get real creative when it comes to like the hotel room and figure that shit out, because there's not a lot of space there. Another one would be getting outside, and they have like great, some hotels with their lobbies have great spaces where you can work from. So that's also another place I would work from too. But for you, figuring out like the two or three, like which ones vibe for you, which ones help to minimize the amount of distractions that you're dealing with. Maybe you do have a home office that you can choose from, but maybe you want to go outside too. So being able to have a place outside that you could work could be really helpful, and you're getting outside time. Another step forward of actually, even no matter how small that is, even if it's just getting out the front door and you're like, all right, I just gotta get out the front door, get out of the house this way. That makes a difference. And we're starting small, but we're going to build upon that. So, and I feel you on that too. Like you got to start small is how I look at it for being able to sustain that over time. So that is play number 2 to think about. Play number 3. This is going to boundaries. So we've talked about that with the space itself. Let's talk about boundaries for the actual schedule, okay? Because I know we would love in the perfect world to hold on to our times when we commit to each day of this is my start time, this is my end time. I was so intense about this of like, all right, I gotta wake up and I gotta start work at this time, and then I gotta end it at this time. And that was helpful for me at that time because I was super lazy with this. Like it would be really difficult at times for me to be motivated to go and work because of after my burnout with that recovery. Like it was tough. I was like, I was playing the victim card. I was using that victim card, and I was feeling bad about myself. Self-esteem was low. It just all became this nasty, vicious cycle that just sucks. Like no place for that. Like yes, we want to honor our feelings and honor that time, but also we want to move through that. We do not want to get stuck in that is my belief and was helped me. And so I needed that structure to start like this is my start time, end time. But then there's going to be a moment that happens where things come up, challenges you face in the middle of the workday. If that's one of your young kids, like needing some help to a work project that comes through, that's like, we got to get this done. And your team is relying on you to help out with this. There are so many of these moments that you're going to have to step up. And I feel you on that. It is going to be a moment of courage to do that. And that's where we have to come in with this commitment of flexible boundaries. Flexible boundaries for those moments, and we don't want them to be the majority of the time. Absolutely not. We want to make sure I'm big on boundaries too. Like we want to make sure the majority of the time we're holding to our boundaries, but we're going to have to also realize there's moments where we got to step up and put out the fires, the metaphorical fires that we experience, and just get through the shit of the day, of what hits us. So in those moments, that is where flexible boundaries is an important play to use. The reason I say that, so what happens when we create rigid boundaries is inevitably we're going to break those. And anytime we're breaking those, it can feel like a promise that's broken to yourself. I said I was going to end work at 5. It's 5:15. So I'm a failure. And now I'm guilty for like the feeling of taking personal time. Now I gotta, or basically because I wasn't able to take the personal time, I feel guilty now to myself. It's this weird cycle. Like we're not even guilty to anyone else. It's like, oh, I broke promises to myself. Like I suck, or this is shitty. And what that does internally is we start to distrust ourselves because of that. And I've taught about this before, but when we start to distrust ourselves, that then increases the anxiety, elevates the stress that we're not even realizing why we're feeling stressed. It just happens. And then that leads to then the chronic exhaustion, and we're getting into that chronic inflammation and going back to that red flag. So when we can have the flexible boundaries, that gives us a permission slip to know that there are going to be moments where we're not perfect, because perfection doesn't exist. I'm here to tell you that. I need that reminder too sometimes. These high fucking standards we set for ourselves, they can also hurt us. Doesn't mean to not have standards, but to realize there are going to be moments where we're going to slip. So I want to do pushback here. With this play reminds me of is what happened when it came to the quiet quitting moment, the movement. Quiet quitting movement that happened with my generation, where there was what it is. If you're not familiar with it, it's when you're at work, especially this is more particular to corporate setting. And I would even argue that this could be done for business too, business owners. You're doing the bare minimum. So bare minimum, showing up for meetings, showing up, sending out the emails you got to send out, doing the basic tasks to get through the day. It creates the autopilot. Now, what that has translated into for this next generation coming up as a generalization for Gen Z is this term. I wrote it down because I thought it was so ridiculous for wording, and I get where it's coming from. I have empathy for it, but almost like, shit, this is where we're at right now. And that term is resentism. And what that means is now you're doing the bare minimum of your work for your team or your company, but now you add onto that resentment for the employer if you're working corporate, to the clients if you're business owner, and you're fueling the resentment. And so what that does is it just makes it miserable, even more so for life. So you're adding even more misery to yourself with that. And I get where it's coming from. We have been lied to. I think of my generation of, you go through college, you're going to get a job, you're going to be able to pay off your debts, you're going to be able to buy that home, like all of this, like American dream, like, oh, you got this, it's going to be great. And then we've dealt with one economic collapse after the other, to a pandemic. Like, I get it, and I get it, but it doesn't mean that we have to give up either. Okay. So I hear where you're coming from. Like, I feel it for where you're coming from for this, for how this has gotten to this point. However, what happens when we're at this level of resentment is there's a lack of communication there. And communication is when we are not able to communicate our feelings, what's going on, being able to communicate time off in the workplace and actually have our team support us and being able to take breaks and offload tasks. We're just adding more and more and more fuel for the chronic exhaustion. And it's something I really want to help you reverse directions on and get out of. So that is where there are going to be those moments of being able to step up and communicate what is going on and what's happening. And my hope is for those in leadership positions to be able to recognize those people that are putting in the extra effort and putting the extra commitment, and being able to celebrate that, acknowledge that, and support them too. That's really important from a leadership standpoint. So those are 3 plays as a recap that I want to share with you today. First one being get outside. Figure out the activities that you can try outside that allow you to be social with other people, is helpful. If you can't get to that level, just getting outside, going for a walk, doing some sort of activity at a park where you can have other people around is going to be really helpful for you to get off the path of burnout and reverse it. The other one is being able to define your workspaces at home. Figuring out what those are for you, 2 to 3, really helpful, add variety, and you can mix it up a little bit. The third one after that is being able to have flexible boundaries. So make sure you have flexible boundaries, realizing things are going to come up in the tasks, challenges, storms are coming through that you are going to have to navigate and have to deal with. It is inevitable of life. This is real life. Okay. This is not Instagram, social media of like unrealistic expectations of being able to just hang out at the park 24/7, 365. I wouldn't even do that. But you get what I'm trying to say. Like that, like this is not real life, is online. That is a highlight reel. And I appreciate those that are trying to push more of the real life in the digital space. That's really important. But this is, again, your reminder that you absolutely got this. You're going to face the challenges. You are absolutely capable of being able to handle those. You have that energy and that ability. You do. It's just being able to figure out the right plays that are going to help you to stop the growth of the burnout beast, that body inflammation, and then reverse it to the direction of making burnout extinct. So if you like this episode, please don't forget to rate the podcast to help get this message out of make burnout extinct. And you can share what resonates with you from this episode by connecting with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I want to meet you where you're at. And thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. I don't take that for granted, and excited to be able to reconnect again soon.